My hands trembled as the James Webb's images revealed the impossible, perfectly symmetrical lattice structure, pulsing with mathematical patterns at the edge of our known universe, defying every scientific principle we've established about cosmic formation. What began as classified NASA data I risked everything to expose has led me through a shimmering portal in the Chilean desert to confront a truth so profound it will forever alter humanity's understanding of our place in the Masa. Cosmos, but am I prepared for the devastating revelation waiting when our future selves finally speak? The coffee machine hissed behind me as the James Webb data streamed onto my monitor. 3 days without proper sleep, and what appeared on my screen made me forget exhaustion entirely. I jolted upright, spilling hot liquid across my NASA-issued pants, my eyes locked on an image that defied everything I thought I knew about our universe. There, against the velvet backdrop of deep space, floated something impossible, our vast geometric structure, its perfect angles and symmetrical lattices screaming of intelligent design. This wasn't a natural formation or random cosmic debris. This massive construction, easily the size of our solar system, was deliberately built and sat at the edge of our observable universe, in a region we'd never properly imaged before Webb's enhanced capabilities. My fingers trembled as I tapped furiously at my keyboard, enhancing sections and verifying the data hadn't corrupted during transmission. "Dr. Nakamura, you're here awfully early." I nearly fell from my chair, my heart hammering against my ribs as I turned to find Dr. Victoria Reynolds standing in the doorway, her copper hair pulled into its usual messy ponytail. As mission supervisor for the Webb's Deep Field Survey, she rarely ventured into the data analysis wing before our morning briefings at 8 a.m. "You absolutely need to see this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper as I gestured frantically toward my screen. She approached slowly, coffee mug in hand, her casual stride transforming into rigid stillness when she reached my station. The porcelain cup slipped from her fingers, shattering against the floor in a splash of dark liquid and ceramic shards. Neither of us moved to clean it up, both transfixed by what glowed on the monitor before us. "Is that what I think? How is this even? When did this come in?" she stammered, unable to complete a single thought. "Artificial structure, confirmed through multiple wavelength analyses," I explained, pulling up supporting data on my second screen. "The probability of natural formation is virtually zero. Those angles maintain precision to 6 decimal places across a structure spanning what appears to be several light years, and the material composition shows element distributions that don't match any known stellar phenomena." Reynolds' face transformed from shock to something harder, more calculated. She reached past me and hit the emergency lockdown button on my consular security measure I'd never seen activated in my 12 years at NASA's Deep Space Division. "Classification Protocol Omega," she announced, her voice suddenly professional and distant. "This doesn't leave this room. Not your team, not your spouse, not even in your personal journals." The room's lights shifted to a pulsing crimson as doors sealed automatically with heavy metallic thuds, emergency protocols engaging throughout our wing of the complex. The sudden isolation felt suffocating as the implications of what we'd discovered pressed down on me with almost physical weight. "But this changes everything: our understanding of cosmic evolution, the Drake equation calculations, the entire question of whether we're alone," I protested, gripping the edge of my desk to steady myself. "The scientific community worldwide needs to collaborate on this immediately." Reynolds leaned closer, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper that carried both warning and fear. "That's precisely why nobody can know yet. Can you imagine the global panic, the religious upheaval, the military scramble for technological advantage if word gets out that something this advanced exists? Governments would tear themselves apart for access to this data." She straightened up, running a hand through her hair. "We need time to understand what we're looking at before the politicians and generals start making decisions that affect humanity's future." My arguments died in my throat as something on the screen demanded both our attention. The structure wasn't static in the new incoming data. What should have been an unchanging image from billions of years in the past was somehow different, the edges of the lattice subtly reconfiguring before our eyes. Not a visual glitch or processing error, the actual electromagnetic signature changed, emitting a burst of energy that our instruments captured in real time, a rhythmic pattern that seemed almost like communication. "It's responding to our observation," I whispered, cold sweat beading on my forehead as the implications crashed through my mind. That's not just impossible, it violates fundamental principles of causality. Reynolds stumbled backward, gripping a nearby desk for support, her face draining of all color. The light from that region is billions of years old. We're seeing this structure as it existed before Earth even formed. It can't possibly be reacting to us now unless... Her voice trailed off, unable to complete the thought that would shatter our understanding of physics itself. Unless it somehow exists outside normal space-time, I finished, the words sounding absurd even as evidence pulsed before us. Or unless whoever built it mastered some form of quantum entanglement across cosmic distances. The pattern changed again, shifting into a complex sequence that repeated with mathematical precision. I frantically initiated capture protocols, recording every fluctuation while simultaneous alerts from other instruments began flooding my secondary screens, the giant radio telescope in Puerto Rico, deep space monitoring stations in Australia and South Africa. Even amateur astronomers' automated systems were detecting unusual signals from the same region of space. It's broadcasting, I breathed, pulling up the incoming data streams. Not just to us, to everyone with the capability to receive. This isn't an isolated observation anomaly, it's a deliberate transmission. Reynolds' scientific training seemed to overtake her initial shock as she pulled a chair beside me, eyes narrowing at the cascading data. Run spectral analysis on those pulses. See if there's any pattern we can. The lights in the lab flickered, monitors momentarily dimming before surging back to full brightness. Every device in the room, computers, phones, even Reynolds' digital watch displayed the same pattern that pulsed from the cosmic structure, a perfect synchronization that couldn't be coincidental. It's in our systems, Reynolds whispered, backing away from the equipment. Shut it down. Shut everything down now. Before I could react, my monitor displayed a sequence unlike anything I'd ever seen. Not random noise, but structured information that my brain somehow recognized despite its alien nature. Mathematical constants appeared first. Pi, phi, the square root of 2, universal values that would be recognizable to any intelligence capable of basic mathematics. Then, emerging from these foundations, imagery formed three-dimensional renderings of DNA helixes, atomic structures, solar systems, and finally, coordinates, precise navigational markers pointing to a location on Earth. My God, Reynolds whispered, her professional demeanor crumbling as she gripped my shoulder with trembling fingers. It knows we're here. It knows where we are. A final image appeared, a perfect rendering of our observation facility, down to the cars parked outside, followed by a timestamp, 12 hours from now. An invitation. Or a warning. Director Malcolm Blackwood strode into the quarantined lab like a storm front, flanked by security personnel wearing expressions as cold as their tactical gear. His imposing frame and military bearing seemed to shrink the already crowded space as technicians disconnected our equipment from external networks. Dr. Nakamura, Dr. Reynolds, he acknowledged with clipped formality, his eyes betraying nothing of what he thought about the chaos unfolding around us. I understand you've encountered an anomaly in the Webb data stream. The Pentagon is very interested in your findings. The way he said, Pentagon, sent ice through my veins. This wasn't supposed to be a military matter. The James Webb program operated under civilian scientific oversight. I exchanged glances with Reynolds, whose earlier panic had transformed into something harder, more resolute. It's far more than an anomaly, Director, she replied, straightening her posture to match his. We've discovered what appears to be an artificial structure at the cosmic horizon that's actively communicating with Earth systems. The signal contains coordinates and a timestamp for later today. Blackwood's expression didn't change, but the security team tensed visibly. Show me, he commanded, not a request but an order that brooked no refusal. I pulled up the archived data, all we had left after the emergency protocols wiped our active system sand, displayed the structure, the transmission patterns, and the final coordinates pointing to our very facility. As he studied the screens, I noticed the lack of surprise in his eyes. He'd known already, or at least suspected what we'd found. Effective immediately, this discovery falls under the Cosmic Security Protocol, Blackwood announced, signaling to his team, who began distributing non-disclosure agreements thicker than any scientific documentation I'd ever seen. All personnel who observed the anomaly will submit to temporary relocation and debriefing. Relocation? I blurted out, taking the heavy document with trembling hands. This is a scientific discovery, not a national security threat. These patterns suggest intelligent communication, possibly the most important first contact scenario in human history. Blackwood fixed me with a stare that had likely silenced generals. Dr. Nakamura, what you've discovered is either a foreign cyber attack disguised as astronomical data or something far beyond your security clearance to discuss. Either way, you'll be escorted to secure accommodations while our specialists evaluate the situation. Reynolds slammed her hand on the desk, her scientific caution now completely abandoned. That's absurd. Every observatory on Earth with sufficient equipment is picking up these signals. You can't possibly contain this information globally. Other facilities are experiencing equipment malfunctions. Blackwood replied with practiced smoothness. A solar flare event is being reported as the cause. Now, if you'll gather your personal items, my team will escort you to the debriefing facility. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees as security personnel positioned themselves by each exit. My colleagues looked at each other with expressions ranging from confusion to outright fear. This wasn't standard scientific protocol. This was a full government containment operation happening in real time. I slipped a memory drive into my pocket while pretending to collect my notebooks, a backup of the initial transmission data I'd made instinctively when Reynolds first hit the lockdown button. 12 years in astronomical research had taught me that bureaucracy and politics could bury discoveries as effectively as any cosmic dust cloud. "Where exactly are we being taken?" asked Professor Marcus Young, our team's senior quantum physicist who had arrived just after the lockdown began. His normally jovial face was ashen, voice uncharacteristically small in the tension-filled room. "A secure facility in Nevada," Blackwood answered, checking his watch with deliberate casualness. "Standard procedure for cosmic anomaly verification. You'll be well accommodated and back at work within a week." The lie hung in the air like poison gas. None of us believed we'd be returning anytime soon, not after what we'd witnessed. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a text message somehow piercing through whatever communication blackout they'd established. It was from my former research partner, Dr. Samira Kapoor, now working at the European Space Agency. "Maya, are you seeing this? Our system's going haywire. Strange transmission from JWT sector. Call me ASAP." So the Europeans had detected it too. Blackwood was lying about containing the information. I glanced at Reynolds, who gave me an almost imperceptible nod she'd received something similar. This wasn't isolated to American facilities. As we were herded toward the exit, the building's emergency system suddenly activated, klaxons wailing and sprinklers spraying water across sensitive equipment. In the confusion, Reynolds grabbed my arm and pulled me toward an emergency exit while security personnel rushed to protect the computer systems. "The timestamp!" she hissed in my ear as we pushed through the door into blinding morning sunlight. "Whatever's coming isn't waiting 12 hours. It's happening now." The sky above the facility had turned an impossible shade of purple-black, swirling like oil on water despite the clear weather forecast. At the center of the disturbance, a pinpoint of light grew steadily brighter, pulsing with the exact pattern we'd observed from the cosmic structure. "Run!" Reynolds commanded, pulling me toward the parking lot. Whatever agency Blackwood really works for, they knew about this before we discovered it. They've been expecting it, preparing for it. And they're terrified. We sprinted across the campus as other staff poured from buildings, all eyes fixed on the growing anomaly above. Security teams scrambled to establish a perimeter, but their training clearly hadn't covered atmospheric disturbances that defied physics. My car beeped as I frantically pressed the unlock button, sliding into the driver's seat as Reynolds jumped in beside me. The engine roared to life just as black SUVs screeched into position at the campus exits. "The coordinates," I gasped, fumbling with my phone's GPS. The transmission didn't point to the facility, it pointed to a location 50 miles east, in the desert. "That's where we need to go." Reynolds gripped the dashboard as I swerved around a barricade, taking an access road normally used only for equipment deliveries. "How do you know we can trust this signal? What if it's leading us into danger?" I glanced at her, then back at the swirling vortex now dominating the sky above the research center. More dangerous than what's happening there. Whatever sent this message crossed billions of light years to reach us. I need to know why. As we crested a hill and accelerated onto the highway, the rearview mirror showed a column of light connecting sky to earth where our facility stood, the impossible beam piercing through clouds and buildings alike. My phone buzzed again, emergency alerts now flooding every channel. reports of similar phenomena appearing over scientific installations worldwide. It wasn't just communicating with us, Reynolds whispered, her scientific mind clearly racing to process what we were witnessing. It was communicating with every advanced observatory on the planet simultaneously. The desert stretched before us, empty and vast under the morning sun. According to the GPS, we were 30 minutes from the coordinates, whatever they marked. Maya, Reynolds said quietly, using my first name for the first time since we'd worked together. If this is truly a first contact scenario, why did Blackwood and his people already know about it? Why were they prepared with containment protocols specifically designed for this situation? The question hung between us as my car ate up the empty miles, the desert unchanging except for a distant shimmer that seemed to grow more distinct with each passing minute. Not a mirage, but something waiting for us, something that had perhaps been waiting for a very long time. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel as a new thought struck me. What if this isn't first contact at all? What if it's a reunion? The computer screen bathed my face in an eerie blue glow as another string of numbers materialized from the transmission. 3 days without sleep had left my eyes burning, but I couldn't stop now. Not when the patterns were beginning to make sense. I grabbed my coffee mug only to find it empty again the 5th time tonight. Come on, I whispered to the scrolling data. Tell me your secrets. The wall of my apartment had transformed into a chaotic canvas printouts, calculations, and star charts connected by red string that mapped the unusual signal's trajectory. My neighbors probably thought I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. Getting fired from NASA tends to do that to a person. The transmission pattern pulsed across my screen. Not random noise, but something deliberately constructed. Each sequence contained prime numbers, followed by what looked like coordinates, then mathematical constants that appeared in nature. No random cosmic event created this. Something or someone crafted this message with purpose. A sharp knock at my door sent my heart racing. Had they found me? The government wouldn't simply let someone walk away with classified data about the most significant discovery in human history. I peered through the peephole and saw a face I recognized but hadn't expected: Eliza Martinez. Her curly hair disheveled and dark circles under her eyes matching my own. You going to let me in, or should I discuss classified astronomical anomalies in your hallway? She asked loud enough for my neighbors to hear. I yanked the door open and pulled her inside. What are you doing here? I hissed. They're monitoring everyone who worked on the Webb project. Eliza tossed her backpack onto my couch. Why do you think I took 3 buses and left my phone at home? They fired me too, Chen. Yesterday. Apparently asking too many questions about missing data is frowned upon at NASA these days. Hope and fear battled in my chest. Having Eliza here changed everything. Her expertise in xenolinguistics had earned her respect across multiple space agencies. If anyone could help decode this signal, it was her. They're hiding something big, she continued, scanning my wall of evidence. Something that scared them enough to risk their best researchers' careers. Look at this, I said, guiding her to my main screen. The structure doesn't just exist, it's broadcasting. Cyclic patterns with mathematical precision. Eliza's eyes widened as she studied the data. Without a word, she pulled a specialized tablet from her backpack and connected it to my system. My personal algorithm, she explained. Designed to identify pattern-based communication across cultural boundaries. If this is language, we'll find it. Hours blurred together as we worked. Dawn crept through my blinds, painting streaks of gold across papers scattered on the floor. Outside, birds began their morning songs, oblivious to the fact that somewhere across the universe, something ancient was calling to us. Chen, look at this. Eliza's voice jolted me from near sleep. On screen, her algorithm had reorganized the signal into something new: concentric rings of data with meaning emerging from chaos. It's responding to observation, she whispered in awe. The transmission changed after the Webb focused on it. It's not just broadcasting, it's reacting to being seen. A chill ran down my spine. You're saying it knows we're watching. I'm saying it was waiting for us to watch. The algorithm continued its work, translating mathematical patterns into symbols, then concepts. Slowly, impossibly, words began forming on the screen. This can't be real, I breathed. The message was simple yet profound. Return home. Coordinates follow. Below appeared a sequence that Eliza quickly identified as latitude and longitude on Earth, pointing to a location in the Atacama Desert of Chile. This makes no sense, I said, pacing. An ancient structure at the edge of the observable universe shouldn't know Earth coordinates. That's impossible? Eliza finished, her face pale with realization. Unless whoever built it knew exactly who would find it. Unless they knew us. Rain began tapping against my window as we stared at each other. The magnitude of what we'd discovered settling between us like an invisible weight. The structure has to be artificial, I said. But no alien civilization would use Earth's coordinate system. So either they've been studying us for a very long time, or it's not alien at all, Eliza whispered. What if it's human? The implications made my legs weak. I collapsed into my chair, mind racing through possibilities. Future humans, I asked. Some advanced civilization we evolve into. But the cosmic distance. Time and space aren't what we think, Eliza said, excitement replacing her fatigue. You know the theories about the universe's edge. Space-time behaves differently there. What if they found a way to create a bridge across time itself? Another message appeared on screen, as if responding to our realization. Temporal bridge activated. Await further instructions. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Unusual seismic activity reported in northern Chile, precisely at the coordinates we'd been given. Something was happening there. Something big. Eliza gripped my arm, her eyes alight with determination. They're going to seal this discovery forever, Chen. Classification so deep even Congress won't know it exists. So what do we do? I asked, though I already knew the answer. We go to Chile, she said, pulling up flight information on her tablet. We see what our future selves want to show us. The final transmission of the night flashed across my screen before the signal went silent. Time grows short. The junction approaches. Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating my apartment in electric blue for one breathtaking moment. The same blue as the structure at the edge of the universe. The same blue that would soon guide us across the world to face a truth beyond imagination. The Jeep's tires kicked up clouds of rusty dust as we sped across the Atacama's alien landscape. Eliza clutched the dashboard when we hit another rut, sending us bouncing against our seatbelts. The barren plateau stretched around us like Mars, completely lifeless except for the occasional hardy shrub, clinging to existence against all odds. The most lifeless place on Earth, I muttered, squinting through sunglasses at the GPS. Of course they'd pick here for first contact. Not first contact, Eliza corrected, checking our water supply for the third time. More like future contact. 2 days had passed since we'd secretly boarded a flight to Chile using cash and fake IDs provided by Eliza's cousin, questions I deliberately hadn't asked about. We'd maxed out our credit cards renting this off-road vehicle and buying supplies from a suspicious vendor in San Pedro. If we survived this adventure, financial ruin awaited us back home. If we didn't survive, well, credit scores wouldn't matter much then. 3 kilometers ahead, Eliza announced, comparing satellite images on her tablet to the harsh reality outside our windshield. There should be a formation of rocks that looks like a hand reaching up from the ground. I finished, pointing at the eerie natural sculpture looming ahead. Just like in your translation. The formation hadn't appeared in any guidebook or geological survey, yet Eliza's algorithm had described it perfectly when decoding the transmission. Something about quantum entanglement and psychic impressions across time. Most of it went over my head, but the evidence was right in front of us. I parked the Jeep in the shadow of the rock formation, killing the engine. The sudden silence felt physical, pressing against my eardrums. No birds, no insects, no wind. Just the tick of our cooling engine and the sound of our breathing. We're being watched, Eliza whispered, her eyes scanning the horizon. By what? There's nothing for miles. She shook her head. Not by anything here, from there. She pointed upward, not at the sky but symbolically toward the distant edge of the cosmos where the structure floated. We unloaded our equipment, sensors, cameras, computers, and enough batteries to power a small village. The sun beat down mercilessly as we worked, setting up a perimeter of monitoring devices around the coordinates. Ground temperature is 15 degrees higher at the exact point, I noted, checking readings. And look at this electromagnetic measurement. It's off the charts. Eliza knelt to examine the soil. There's a perfect circle where nothing grows, not even bacteria in the soil samples. She stood, dusting off her hands. Something powerful has touched this place before. A distant rumble drew our attention. On the horizon, a dust cloud approached. "Vehicle," I said, grabbing binoculars. "No, vehicles, multiple." Through the lenses, I spotted 3 black SUVs racing toward us across the desert floor. "Government?" Eliza asked, already packing essential equipment. "Worse," I said, recognizing the lead vehicle. "NASA security, Kessler himself. How did they find us so quickly?" I pointed to her tablet. "The transmission. They've been monitoring it too. They knew exactly where we'd go. With no time to escape, we focused on gathering our most important data. Whatever was coming, revelation or arrest, we needed proof." As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, the desert transformed. Colors deepened to impossible richness: ochre, burgundy, gold. The temperature plummeted, sending us reaching for jackets. "Something's happening," Eliza said, pointing to her instruments. "Radiation levels climbing, but not dangerous. More like background cosmic radiation shifting focus." The approaching vehicles were now 15 minutes away when the ground beneath our feet began to vibrate. Not violently like an earthquake, but with precision, a rhythmic pulsing exactly matching the transmission pattern from the cosmic structure. "It's starting," I whispered, awestruck. The air 20 feet ahead of us began to shimmer, like heat waves but more geometric. Perfectly straight lines formed in midair, connecting invisible points of energy until they created a doorway shape of rippling light. "Recording everything," Eliza confirmed, her scientific training overriding her fear. The portal there was no other word for it, stabilized into a translucent blue rectangle hovering 3 feet above the desert floor. Through it, we glimpsed a vast chamber that couldn't possibly exist in the barren landscape before us. Walls lined with the same geometric patterns as the cosmic structure stretched into impossible distance. "It's a bridge," I realized aloud, "not just across space but time." The government vehicles were now close enough that we could hear their engines. We had minutes at most. From the portal emerged not a being but a voice, or, rather, a sensation that translated to understanding in our minds without passing through our ears. "Observers," it communicated. "You have come." Eliza stepped forward, her scientific skepticism visibly warring with wonder. "Who are you? What is this structure we've discovered?" "Not who, when," came the reply. "We are what remains after the Great Transition, what humanity becomes." My scientific mind struggled to process the implications. "You're saying the structure isn't alien? It's human-made? From our future?" "From a future," the presence corrected. "One possible branch. Your civilization approaches a critical junction point. Multiple futures diverge from decisions about to be made. Behind us, vehicles screeched to a halt, doors slammed, voices shouted commands. This area is under government quarantine." Kessler's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Step away from the anomaly immediately." Armed agents spread out, creating a perimeter around us and the shimmering portal. Director Kessler approached alone, his face a mask of controlled fury and poorly hidden fear. "Dr. Chen, Dr. Martinez," he said quietly once within earshot. "You have no idea what you've done. Every major power has detected this activation. We're on the brink of a new kind of war. This isn't about national interests," I argued. "This belongs to all humanity." The presence from the portal interrupted, its thoughts now reaching everyone present. The agents froze, weapons lowering involuntarily as the communication touched their minds. "Your species stands at a precipice," it conveyed. "In our timeline, the discovery of advanced intelligence led not to unity but to devastating competition. Nations fought to control the knowledge. The resulting conflict set humanity back centuries. That's why we classified the discovery," Kessler admitted, his arrogance momentarily cracking. "Every country is already scrambling for advantage." The portal expanded suddenly, enveloping our small group in its blue light. Time seemed to stop as the presence shared a visioner near future splitting into multiple paths. One showed a desperate arms race, triggered by knowledge of the structure, leading to a dark age of conflict. Another revealed a different way: cooperation, shared discovery, and eventual transcendence. The setting sun touched the horizon, painting everything in fiery gold. Night would fall soon, bringing cold that could kill in this harsh desert. But more immediately, Decisions made in the next few minutes would ripple across centuries. "Why now?" I asked the presence. "Why reveal yourselves after remaining hidden for so long? The structure was always visible, but only now has your technology evolved enough to detect it, and only now have conditions aligned for potential change." Kessler's radio crackled with urgent reports of similar phenomena appearing globally, portals opening at precisely calculated points around Earth, each connected to the same future presence. "It's happening everywhere," he whispered, his authority meaningless in the face of something so beyond our control. As stars began appearing in the darkening sky above the Atacama, I realized why this location had been chosen. Here, under the clearest skies on Earth, the line between heaven and ground blurred. Here, we could truly see our place in the cosmos. The presence focused attention on a small object now floating at the portal's threshold, a crystalline device pulsing with the same rhythm as the cosmic structure. "A choice must be made," it communicated. "This contains knowledge, not weapons or technology that might unbalance power, but understanding that could unite your fractured world. Will you choose competition or cooperation? The path diverges here." Eliza and I exchanged glances, 15 years of scientific training colliding with a moment beyond science. Kessler looked broken, a man whose worldview had shattered in minutes. The device floated between us, pulsing with possibility, as the desert night closed in and the stars of distant galaxies, including the one that held our mysterious future, watched in silent witness. The portal hovered before us like a tear in reality, its edges pulsing with that same unmistakable mathematical rhythm we'd detected from the cosmic structure. My scientific mind struggled to process what my eyes witnessed: a doorway where solid desert had existed seconds before, leading to somewhere impossible. "Recording everything," Eliza whispered, her phone shakily documenting the phenomenon, while dust swirled around us in unnatural patterns, pulled toward the shimmering gateway. Though I doubt anyone will believe this isn't doctored footage. The air temperature plummeted 20 degrees in an instant, frost crystallizing on the nearby rocks despite the desert setting. Through the opening, we glimpsed what appeared to be a vast chamber, walls adorned with those same lattice patterns from the Webb images, like stepping from a two-dimensional blueprint into the fully realized structure. My heart hammered against my ribs as something moved within that impossible space. Not walking, not floating, but simply transferring from one point to another, like watching reality glitch. The figure materialized partly through the portal, existing in both spaces simultaneously, being composed of geometries and light rather than flesh, its form constantly shifting yet maintaining a vaguely humanoid shape. "You arrived precisely when calculated," it communicated, though I heard nothing with my ears. The words formed directly in my consciousness, bypassing my auditory system entirely. The probability matrix suggested a 43% chance of successful contact. Eliza collapsed to her knees beside me, overwhelmed by the telepathic intrusion. I helped her up, my scientific training battling against primal fear. "What are you?" I forced myself to ask the question, burning in both our minds. The being's form shimmered, geometric patterns rearranging into something more recognizable, almost human, yet clearly artificial. "We are the continuum. Once, separate individuals like yourselves, now unified consciousness. Once bound by physical limitations, now ascended." "Alien," Eliza ventured, clutching my arm so tightly I'd later discover bruises. The being's response hit us like a physical force, images flooding our minds faster than words could convey. Earth transformed over eons, humanity's evolution through technological integration, biological enhancement, and finally, transcendence beyond physical form. Species-wide ascension rather than extinction. "Not alien," I gasped aloud, the revelation staggering me backward. "Human, future human. The Bienga, descendant from unimaginable millennia, a head confirmed with a subtle shift in its luminous form. The structure you detected exists at the cosmic horizon, where space-time properties allow for temporal communication bridges. We constructed it as an anchor point to reach backward through your timeline." "Why now?" Eliza asked, her scientific curiosity winning against her fear. "Why contact us specifically?" A wave of urgency emanated from the being, conveying emotional concepts our primitive language struggled to capture. "Your era stands at a crucial bifurcation point. The next 7 decades determine whether your branch of humanity achieves transcendence or extinction." The being's form expanded, embracing more of our reality. Within its shifting patterns, Images formed our immediate future, unfolding with terrifying clarity. Climate tipping points triggered cascading ecological collapse. Resource wars escalating to deploy genetic weapons alongside nuclear ones. Artificial intelligence achieving autonomy without aligned values. Each catastrophe narrowing humanity's potential futures. Then alternate visions flickered past. Global cooperation emerging from shared crisis, technological breakthroughs harnessed for restoration rather than destruction. Consciousness expansion through harmonious integration with our tools rather than subjugation by them. This isn't just about warning us, I realized, my voice barely audible above the desert wind. You need something from us, don't you? The being's form contracted slightly, acknowledging truth in my statement. The continuum exists across multiple probability branches, but fewer timelines reach our state than once calculated. Your era's decisions affect our existence past and future intertwined. Temporal paradox, Eliza muttered, her scientific mind processing implications. They're trying to ensure their own existence by altering our trajectory. Sudden realization struck me with chilling clarity. The transmission pattern changes we detected weren't random. You've been adjusting your signal based on our responses, haven't you? Testing which communications might successfully influence our development. Before the being could answer, the desert ground trembled beneath our feet. Distant vehicle lights appeared on the horizon, headlights cutting through darkness, approaching fast. Others have detected our connection, the being observed dispassionately. Military forces from multiple nations converge on this location. Anxiety knotted my stomach as I realized our discovery was about to become an international incident. What happens when they arrive? This knowledge could spark conflict rather than cooperation if handled wrong. The being's form shifted again, this time revealing glimpses of cosmic wonders beyond human comprehension. Galactic engineering. Stars repositioned to form perfect energy harvesting arrays. Consciousness expanded to embrace entire systems. Your species stands at crossroads, it communicated. This moment, your choices now ripple forward through probability branches, determining which futures manifest. Helicopter rotors thundered overhead, powerful searchlights sweeping the desert floor, zeroing in on our position and the impossible doorway beside us. They're going to try to seize control, Eliza said, panic edging her voice. Each government wanting this connection for themselves. The being's form pulsed with increased luminosity. What happens next determines whether this contact point becomes humanity's salvation or accelerates your destruction. As military vehicles screeched to a halt nearby, the portal expanded without warning, engulfing us in blinding light. Time seemed to stretch, each second elongating as the being transmitted a final, crucial message directly into our consciousness. The structure is not merely a communication device, it revealed. It is a nexus of all potential human futures, and only one path leads to our shared survival. Director Kessler stepped from the lead vehicle, his face half illuminated by the portal's ethereal glow, half shadowed by night. 20 armed soldiers fanned out behind him, weapons raised but confusion evident in their hesitant movements. Nobody had trained them for confronting a tier in reality itself. "Dr. Chen," Kessler called, his authoritative voice struggling to mask uncertainty. "You've violated multiple federal statutes and potentially compromised global security. Step away from the anomaly immediately." The temporal being observed these new arrivals with detached curiosity, its form now visible to everyone, present impossible to deny, impossible to rationalize away. Several soldiers crossed themselves instinctively, others fumbled with body cameras, desperate to document what their minds struggled to accept. "Your primitive weapons cannot affect us," the being communicated, its thoughts now broadcasting to all present. "We exist primarily outside your temporal reference frame." Kessler faltered mid-stride, clearly receiving the telepathic message. His face paled beneath the harsh floodlights now illuminating the scene from circling helicopters above. "What exactly am I looking at, Chen?" he demanded, trying to reassert control over a situation rapidly exceeding his comprehension. "Humanity's future," I answered simply, finding strange calm amid chaos. "They've reached back through time, using the structure we detected at the cosmic horizon." "Impossible," he muttered, though his eyes betrayed acceptance of the undeniable reality before him. 3 more vehicles arrived, bearing insignias from foreign intelligence services, Chinese, Russian, European Union. The portal's activation had triggered global monitoring systems, drawing every major power to this remote location simultaneously. "This changes everything," Eliza whispered beside me. "Scientific paradigms, religious doctrines, geopolitical power structures all upended in a single night." The being expanded its presence, creating a sphere of influence that encompassed all new arrivals. Within this field, time moved differently, granting us precious minutes while seconds passed in the world beyond. "You must understand what approaches," it communicated, projecting visions into our collective consciousness. "Your civilization faces imminent decision points that determine all possible futures." The images overwhelmed human perception: global temperatures rising beyond habitable levels, coastal cities abandoned, agricultural collapse triggering mass migration and conflict. Then technological responses: atmospheric carbon capture networks, synthetic food systems, artificial intelligence, governance protocols that either saved humanity or enslaved it, depending on implementation choices. "Why show us this?" demanded Colonel Wei from the Chinese contingent, her voice steady despite evident shock. "What do you expect us to do with information we cannot verify?" The being's response manifested as pure knowledge transfer: mathematical proofs, scientific formulas beyond current human discovery, precise predictions for verification. "Each nation here plans to secure exclusive communication with us," the being observed, causing uncomfortable shifting among the government representatives. "You believe technological advantage from this contact will ensure your dominance." "That's standard protocol," Kessler defended, though his conviction wavered. "National security requires. National interests become irrelevant when species survival hangs in balance." The being interrupted, its form pulsing with intensity that made electronic equipment malfunction nearby. "Future branches where any single power controls this knowledge lead to accelerated conflict scenarios." The military forces surrounding us exchanged uneasy glances, international rivalries temporarily overshadowed by shared human bewilderment facing something beyond their comprehension. Eliza stepped forward boldly. "You're showing us multiple possible futures, but clearly favoring one particular path. What exactly do you want from us?" The being's form contracted, becoming more intensely concentrated. "We require implementation of the convergence protocol." "Which is what exactly?" I asked, sensing we approached the core purpose of this extraordinary contact. Rather than explain with words, the being transmitted pure conceptual understanding, a framework for controlled information sharing, technological development guidelines that would prevent extinction-level catastrophes while enabling humanity's gradual advancement toward the being's transcendent state. This protocol wasn't created by us, I realized aloud, understanding dawning. "You're not dictating terms. You're showing us what actually worked in your timeline, the path that led to your existence." The being pulsed affirmation, then expanded the vision, further revealing how implementation would require dismantling current power structures, unprecedented cooperation between rival nations, scientific transparency replacing military secrecy. "Impossible," muttered the European representative. "No governing body would willingly surrender such potential advantage." "Then extinction becomes inevitable," the being stated dispassionately, projecting probability calculations that showed civilizational collapse within decades under current trajectories. Kessler's face hardened with sudden resolve. "This is clearly manipulation. For all we know, this entity could be hostile, using psychological warfare tactics. We need to secure this anomaly and—" His words cut short as the being projected a new vision, this one specifically customized for each observer. I glimpsed Kessler flinching as he witnessed his own children's future in a world of collapsed ecosystems and resource wars. "You calculate odds based on limited variables," the being communicated. "We calculate from complete knowledge of all causal chains leading from this moment." Colonel Wei lowered her weapon first, her tactical assessment shifting. "If what you show is accurate, cooperation isn't merely ethical, it's strategically necessary." "Precisely," the being confirmed. "Self, interest and species. Interest align at this juncture. Temporarily. Tension crackled between the assembled forces, decades of geopolitical rivalry warring against the immediate evidence before them. I watched calculation and recalculation flash across faces trained to reveal nothing. "There's another factor none of you have considered." I interjected, scientific insight crystallizing. "The Webb telescope didn't just happen to detect this structure. Its specific capabilities were necessary for this moment to occur. The being's form shifted in what I somehow recognized as approval. Correct. Your development has been guided through subtle probability manipulation across centuries. Key innovations nudged into existence when necessary. This revelation sent murmurs through the gathered official implications of predestination, challenging notions of human agency and free will. So we have no choice, Kessler demanded, his authority crumbling before cosmic revelations. Choice remains the fundamental variable, the being corrected. We cannot force implementation, only show consequences of various paths. The convergence protocol succeeds only through willing participation. The portal pulsed suddenly, its edges fluctuating as if maintaining the connection required tremendous energy. Our direct communication window closes soon, the being announced. Temporal bridge maintenance exceeds sustainable energy parameters. Urgency gripped me. Before you Goth, structure we detected. What is it actually? The being's form began fragmenting, connection weakening, but its final revelation resonated clearly in our minds. The massive geometric lattice wasn't merely a communication device, but something far more significant, a cosmic-scale quantum computer calculating all possible human futures, identifying the narrow path leading to transcendence, and reaching back through space-time to ensure its own creation. Grandfather paradox, whispered Eliza in awe. They exist because they ensured their own existence. As the portal began collapsing, the being transmitted one final message, no words but pure emotional understanding. Despite vast evolution separating us, despite ascending beyond physical form and individual consciousness, our future selves retained the quintessential quality making them human hope. The desert night suddenly returned to normal as the portal vanished, leaving government forces from 4 global powers standing together in unprecedented proximity, weapons lowered, faces transformed by shared revelation. Kessler broke the silence first. I need secure communication with the president immediately. As do I with Beijing, Colonel Wei added, but her tone had shifted from competitive to collaborative. I watched as history pivoted before my eyes, centuries of human development potentially redirected in a single night beneath the stars. Whatever happened next would determine whether the structure at the edge of our universe represented humanity's greatest achievement or merely a ghost of a future that would never come to pass. The being's light pulsed through my veins like liquid starlight as the vision faded, leaving us all gasping for breath in the desert dawn. Kessler stumbled backward, his authoritative facade crumbling like the dry earth beneath our feet. For the first time since I'd known him, fear shadowed his eyes, not of me or the portal, but of the responsibility suddenly thrust upon us all. Those images, that future, he whispered, his voice carrying on the desert wind. Nuclear wastelands, orbital weapon platforms, all because we couldn't share this discovery properly. Military helicopters circled lower, their spotlights creating shifting shadows across the alien geometry of the portal. I caught Eliza's gaze, finding in her eyes the same terrible understanding. The being had shown us 2 possible futures, one where nations scrambled to weaponize this contact, triggering a cascade of destruction, and another where humanity united around this cosmic revelation. We need a middle path, I declared, stepping between Kessler and the luminous entity whose form rippled like the surface of a star. Neither total secrecy nor chaotic disclosure. The temporal visitor, descendant from untold millennia forward, extended a limb of pure energy that formed a sphere in the air between us. Within it, images danced. Scientific conferences, international agreements, a gradual awakening of human consciousness to our place in the cosmos. It's showing us how to do this, Eliza breathed, reaching toward the sphere without quite touching it. A roadmap for revelation. Kessler pressed his hand to his earpiece, listening to urgent chatter. Chinese satellites have detected the energy signature. The Russians are redirecting resources. India's space agency has gone into emergency session. We have hours, maybe minutes, before this escalates beyond control. The being's thoughts flooded my mind. Convergence point, probability node, future, path determination. Call the president, I urged Kessler. Now. Tell her exactly what we've witnessed. Propose an emergency session of the Security Council. A soldier approached, rifle raised uncertainly at the glowing visitor. Sir, Orders from Washington. Stand down, Kessler snapped, then surprised me by adding, these are not hostile entities. They're us, our future. I turned back to the being, my mind racing with implications. The structure at the edge of the universe, what the James Webb discovered, it's not just a beacon, is it? It's a temporal anchor point. The entity's form shifted in what I somehow recognized as affirmation. Constructed beyond your concept of time. Placed where space-time curvature allows multidimensional contact. Dawn broke fully over the Atacama, bathing us in golden light that paled next to the portal's brilliance. Military vehicles formed a perimeter, but no one approached. The soldiers watched in silent awe as Kessler paced, making call after call, his voice growing more urgent with each passing minute. The Russians are mobilizing their space division, he reported grimly. China has activated their quantum communications network. Inspiration struck me like lightning. Let them see, I said, gesturing to the being. Not just us, everyone. Show the leaders what you showed us. The entity's form expanded, light streaming upward into the sky like a beacon. Satellite feeds would capture this, and I realized that was exactly the point. The being was broadcasting its message worldwide, bypassing human communication channels entirely. Kessler's phone rang continuously. It's happening, he said, incredulous. Emergency sessions everywhere. The president wants to address the UN within the hour. The temporal bridge widened, revealing more of the chamber beyond a vast space filled with similar beings, watching us from across the gulf of time. Our descendants, having evolved beyond physical form, reaching back to this crucial moment in human history. Not aliens. I whispered to the gathering of soldiers and scientists who had formed a loose circle around us. But humanity's future, warning us away from destruction and guiding us toward unity. Eliza's algorithm continued translating the complex patterns emanating from the beings. Her tablet displayed message after message. Cooperation essential. Climate stabilization possible. Resource scarcity solvable. Weaponization path leads to extinction. Collective consciousness achievable. They've been watching us, she realized. Since they first detected the web focusing on their structure, they've been evaluating whether we're ready for contact. As the sun climbed higher, casting the portal's light in stark relief against the desert landscape, world leaders began releasing statements tentative at first, then with growing certainty. The unprecedented synchronicity of their messages suggested something extraordinary was occurring in the halls of power worldwide. This isn't just first contact, Kessler said, showing me his phone screen filled with breaking news alerts. It's first consent. They're all agreeing to a joint protocol for handling this discovery. The being gestured toward the sphere of images again, showing me scenes that made my heart race. International scientific teams collaborating without borders, new educational paradigms emerging, resources redirected from military applications to solving humanity's existential challenges. They're not giving us technology, I realized aloud. They're giving us wisdom. The choice to become them someday, rather than extinguish ourselves. As twilight approached, temporary structures had been erected around the portal site. Scientists from Chile had arrived, followed by diplomats and observers from neighboring countries. The beginning of what would become the International Temporal Contact Commission was taking shape before my eyes. The being approached me directly, its form contracting into a more human-like silhouette. In its hand-like appendage, a small crystalline object materialized a fragment that pulsed with the same rhythmic pattern as the cosmic structure the James Webb had discovered. Connection. It communicated directly to my mind, between there and now, between now and then. As I accepted the crystal, understanding flooded through Methys was both key and compass, a means to maintain contact as we navigated the perilous waters ahead. Not a weapon or a power source, but something far more valuable, a guide. We won't waste this chance, I promised, clutching the crystal as the world changed around us minute by minute, call by call, decision by decision. The portal began to contract as night fell once more, the beings retreating back to their distant future. But the connection remained a bridge across time itself, triggered by our discovery of that impossible ancient structure at the farthest edge of the observable universe. Kessler approached me as the last light faded, his face transforming from exhaustion to resolve. The President has appointed you special envoy to the Temporal Contact Initiative, he said quietly. Apparently, Our future selves requested you specifically. I looked down at the crystal in my palm, still warm with energy from across time. Tell her I accept, but this isn't about nations anymore. This discovery belongs to all of humanity. As the stars appeared overhead, I couldn't help but search for that distant point where the James Webb had first glimpsed the structure where our descendants had built a beacon reaching backward through time, calling us home to a future we now had the chance to create. Blinding camera flashes erupted as I approached the podium at the United Nations, the crystal humming against my chest where it hung on a simple cord. 1 year had transformed me from disgraced scientist to something new in human history, temporal ambassador. The General Assembly fell silent. 500 pairs of eyes fixed on me, representatives from every nation, waiting to hear what messages our future selves had shared this week. The James Webb telescope didn't just find an alien structure. I began, my voice stronger than I felt. It discovered a mirror reflecting humanity's potential. A construction built by what we might become, if we choose wisely now. On the massive screen behind me, the latest images appeared the cosmic structure at the edge of the observable universe, now monitored continuously by an international coalition of space agencies. Its geometric patterns shifted subtly each day, a communication system we were only beginning to comprehend. Yesterday, the temporal bridge in Chile transmitted new mathematical models predicting climate patterns for the next century. I continued, nodding to the Chilean ambassador whose country had become the unexpected center of human evolution. These equations have been verified by independent teams from 27 nations. They offer solutions we hadn't considered and warnings about approaches that lead to disaster. A murmur swept through the assembly as the next slide appeared projected temperature curves showing how close we'd come to irreversible damage, alongside intervention points that could still alter our trajectory. But today's transmission was different, I said, touching the crystal at my neck that had grown warmer throughout my speech. Today, they showed us something beyond science. The lights dimmed as a new kind of image filled the screen, not a mathematical model or technical schematic, but something that defied easy classification. Colors and patterns that somehow conveyed emotions directly to the observer, a communication method beyond language that left many in the audience wiping away unexpected tears. What you're feeling, I explained, my own voice catching, is how our descendants experience consciousness. Not as separate minds, but as a connected awareness that preserves individual identity while transcending isolation. In the front row, Eliza nodded encouragingly. Her work on the translation algorithms had earned her the Nobel Prize last month, though she cared little for the accolade compared to the discoveries themselves. Beside her sat Director Kessler, now heading the International Oversight Committee. His transformation from obstacle to advocate still sometimes surprised me. The structure detected by the James Webb wasn't built by aliens. I reminded them, though this fact had been public knowledge for months. It was constructed by humanity's future beings evolved beyond physical limitation, capable of engineering on cosmic scales and manipulating space-time itself to reach backward and guide us through this critical juncture. On cue, live feeds from the Atacama appeared on the screens of the permanent portal site, now housed in a massive geodesic dome. Scientists from every continent worked there in rotating shifts, cataloging and analyzing each transmission from across time. Today marks the anniversary of first contact, I continued. In that year, global military spending has decreased by 23%, with resources redirected to joint initiatives addressing climate stability, sustainable energy, and poverty elimination. These aren't coincidences, they're direct responses to the guidance we've received. The crystal pulsed against my skin, suddenly hot. Without warning, the screens throughout the General Assembly flickered, replacing the planned graphics with something new, something coming through live. This wasn't scheduled, I said, turning to watch as images cascaded across the displays. The assembly gasped collectively as clear visuals appeared of what could only be Earth, but an Earth transformed. Cities that breathed with living architecture, oceans teeming with restored ecosystems, deserts blooming with engineered forests that sequestered carbon while producing abundant food. Between them all, transportation systems that left no footprint, energy grids that harvested power without pollution. They're showing us what's possible, I whispered, understanding flooding through me. Not in some distant future, but within the lifetimes of children born today. The images accelerated, showing human consciousness expanding first through technological interface, then through biological evolution. and finally transcending physical form, altogether becoming the light beings that had greeted us in the desert. The portal is transmitting at unprecedented levels, called a technician from the back of the hall. Similar reports coming in from observatories worldwide. The crystal in my hand now glowed visibly through my clothing, its light painting my suit with constellation patterns. Without fully understanding why, I removed it and held it up for all to see. This isn't just a communication tool, I realized aloud. It's a key. As if responding to my words, the crystal projected a holographic map of Earth with thousands of points illuminated across every continent, every ocean. Coordinates? Eliza exclaimed, rushing to my side with her tablet already analyzing the pattern. Thousands of them, each corresponding to mineral deposits, no specific geomagnetic junctions. Understanding crashed through me like a wave. They're not just guiding us with information, I said, awe making my voice tremble. They're showing us how to build our own temporal network beginning now. The assembly erupted in excited chaos as diplomats conferred with scientists, military leaders whispered to spiritual advisors, economists frantically recalculated projections. "Order, please," called the Secretary General, her voice barely cutting through the tumult. When relative calm returned, she turned to me. "Dr. Chen, are you suggesting that these coordinates represent sites for what exactly?" I studied the crystal, watching how its internal structure mirrored the cosmic construction the James Webb had discovered. "Nodes," I answered. "Connection points in a planetary network that will allow more direct communication with our future selves. Not just at the Chile portal, but everywhere. The implications for sovereignty," began one diplomat. "The security concerns," started another. "The economic disruption," a third voice joined. The Secretary General raised her hand for silence. "Dr. Chen has earned our trust this past year. If our future selves are offering this network, we should at least consider what it means." I placed the crystal on the podium where its light spread outward, touching each delegate in turn with its gentle radiance. The James Webb telescope discovered not just a structure but a choice, I said quietly. Do we continue as we are fragmented, competitive, short-sighted? Do we become something greater? A shadow crossed the chamber as something massive blocked the sun outside. Gasps and cries filled the room as delegates rushed to the windows. Floating above the United Nations building was a miniature version of the cosmic structure geometric lattice of light, suspended in mid-air, visible to all of Manhattan. My phone buzzed with notifications as similar apparitions appeared simultaneously at each of the coordinates on the holographic map, from the plains of Africa to the mountains of Asia, from Arctic ice to Amazon rainforest. "They're not waiting anymore," I whispered to Eliza as we stared through the windows at the impossible construction hovering overhead. "The network is activating whether we're ready or not." "But how? We haven't built anything yet," she replied, her scientific mind struggling with the paradox. The truth hit me with stunning clarity. Because in their timeline we already did. What we're seeing is the echo of what we will build, reaching backward through time just as they've reached forward. As delegates from every nation watched in stunned silence, the lattice structure above the UN began to pulse in rhythm with the crystal on the podium. Each beat sent visible waves of energy washing over the city below, not destructive, but transformative. Trees in nearby parks straightened and flourished. Pollution haze dissipated. Even the noise of traffic seemed to harmonize into something almost musical. "It's showing us what happens when we align with the future they're offering," I explained, understanding flowing through me from some source beyond conscious thought. Not forcing, but inviting. The Secretary General approached the podium, her expression solemn but eyes bright with something I hadn't seen in any world leader until now. Genuine hope. "Dr. Chen," she said, "it appears the vote I was about to call has been rendered somewhat moot. The question now is not whether we accept this connection, but how we respond to it." I nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. This was always going to be humanity's choice. What the James Webb discovered wasn't an alien threat or salvation, it was ourselves, reaching back with an invitation to become more than we are. As night fell across New York, the lattice structure above the UN glowed brighter, casting its light across the city that had seen so much of human history unfold. Inside the General Assembly, representatives of humanity debated not if they would join this cosmic network, but how quickly they could begin. I stood at the window, watching as ordinary citizens gathered in streets and parks. pointing upward at the geometric miracle hanging in the sky. Not with fear, but with wonder. News reports showed similar scenes unfolding worldwide, a moment of unity unprecedented in human experience. The crystal hummed a final time before going dormant in my hand, its purpose fulfilled. The bridge had been established, the choice offered, the path illuminated. "What happens now?" Eliza asked, joining me at the window. I smiled, watching as the lattice structure began to dissolve into countless points of light that drifted downward like luminous snow, each mote seeking out a human recipient below. "Now we build it," I answered. "The network, the future, ourselves." In scientific outposts and university labs around the world, researchers who had been monitoring the James Webb telescope reported that the structure at the edge of the universe was changing, expanding outward in all directions. No longer a solitary beacon, but the first node in a cosmic web that stretched across space and time. Not alien at all, but perfectly, wonderfully human, what we could become when we finally understood that we were never alone. We had always been connected to each other, to our future, to the universe itself. The James Webb had simply helped us see it clearly for the first time.